welcome. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm excited to be here. It's Terrific Tuesday is what I call it.
There you go. It's already Tuesday. Jeez. Well, tell everybody, Daron, who you are and why you're here.
Hey, I'm Daron Franklin. I'm the creator of F42 Empowerment, and I'm here today to help the audience or the faces of Grand Prairie to go beyond the edge. Especially, we'll have some conversations about men and being able to help different males, young and older and middle-aged men to continue to elevate to higher heights and take the steps toward progress.
Well, good. I'm glad you're here. I have my little notes opened, but I'm gonna keep it closed for all. You actually reached out to me because we were at was it the prayer breakfast that we were at together?
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah, so good. So tell people a little bit about what your background is in Grand Prairie. Okay. What are you doing? And we can kind of go from there.
Sounds good. And thank you again, Jenna, for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.
The faces of Grand Prairie. So here in Grand Prairie, I've been here for about 2 years now. Actually, what I found out was my first year of leaving Fort Worth Southwest High School, I decided not to be a head football coach and AD anymore. I wanted to just kind of take a breather, right? And saw that South Grand Prairie High School had a vacancy for coaching and teaching Algebra 1. So I asked my son at the time, he was in the ninth grade, finishing up ninth grade. I said, hey, man, I'm going to step away. I'm going to South Grand Prairie. And I shared with him some of the football players that had come through there. And he was like, oh, yeah.
So did he go to the same school that you were at before?
Yes.
So were you trying to see if he could come with you?
Yes. So long story short, he'll be graduating next week from South Grand Prairie High School.
Yep. A fellow warrior. I graduated in 98.
All right. Cool. Yeah, 98 was a great year.
Yes, it was.
Same year that I graduated.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, very
from
cool.
McDonough 35 in New Orleans.
Awesome.
But just being exposed to South Grand Prairie was a great community. I did teach and coach for 1 year at South Grand Prairie High School, and then I went on to just complete another goal of mine in the teaching and coaching profession. And now I'm here just impacting the community with F42 Empowerment Experience.
So you were a head coach before?
I was fortunate to be a head coach in 2 states, 2 football-rich states, right?
Oh, yeah.
So obviously I'm originally from New Orleans, and I had a chance to be the head coach at at H.L. Bourgeois High School. That's in Gray, Louisiana. And the reference point that I like to use is, have you ever watched the show Swamp People?
Yes.
All right. So down on the bayou, right, is in the Houma area, very rich in culture for marine life and even, different Native American type life, seafood, all some great people down there, right? Very hospitable. So I was a head coach at H.L. Bourgeois High School for a couple of years and then transitioned. And at the time, my family and I, we moved to Fort Worth, Texas, and was an assistant coach at Fort Worth Southwest High School, moved around to Little Elm, and then I got a call from the principal at Fort Worth Southwest, and he was like, hey, man, this job is open. I thought about you. I just moved my family from the western part of the Metroplex to all the way up north. I sold the house and everything. So I was like, no, man, I'm good. But some mentors had to kind of let me know, like, hey, buddy, you're not from here. And if you have an opportunity to at least interview for a job, you need to go ahead and do that. And they decided to allow me to give me a chance to lead the community. And I dove right into it at Fort Worth Southwest High School as the head football coach and athletic director.
And how long? When did you move to Fort Worth from Louisiana?
2016.
Okay. And then you were there this whole last time basically until you moved here a couple of years ago into Grand Prairie.
Yeah. So in Fort Worth, you asking?
Mm-hmm,
yes. Mm-hmm. Lived in Fort Worth from 2016 all the way up until 2023.
What was the difference between the 2 states?
So various differences, right? I would just say, and it's no knock on anyone, right? But down south Louisiana is different from northern Louisiana.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And New Orleans is different from anywhere in the world.
That's very true.
So,
that's very, very true.
Yeah.
It's often that way with major cities in different parts of every state. It's like you go into there and you're like LA is not anything like some of the parts of California.
Yeah.
Dallas is not like every suburb in DFW. So yeah. And New Orleans is incredibly unique.
Yeah, it really is. And the more I continue to grow and expose and expose myself to global places, I really start to realize that New Orleans is very similar to a Caribbean city in North America.
That's very true. I worked for a company that did oil and gas uh, like consulting. Mm-hmm. So we had a Dallas office and then we had a Baton Rouge office.
Yep.
So Baton Rouge and New Orleans are like an hour apart. They're not that far, but everybody that was at and we were going to go have like a little conference in Louisiana. Well, if you've lived in Baton Rouge, you've always gone to New Orleans. And all the people in Dallas, we were like, we want to go to New Orleans. So it's like, how do you make New Orleans interesting for people that have already been there a long time, and then the people that have never been? So they did a scavenger hunt, which I thought was a really cool idea. Okay. They put us on teams, and half of the people lived in Louisiana, half lived in Dallas. So you kind of operated as a tour guide. But it was stuff like go participate with a street performer. Okay. Go to the restaurant where the owner died, and they set up, a thing for him. And I was like, this is really a cool way to go explore. It is. And then everybody from New Orleans said, if you ever get a chance, don't stay on Bourbon Street. Go to some of the street beside Bourbon Street. Yeah. Go experience some of the jazz culture. Yeah. Go on some of the swamp tours and some of those things. We didn't get a chance to go do that. We were only there for a couple of days. But I'm reminded of in Dallas how we take for granted some of the culture that we have in Dallas. Yep. The same way, I'm sure, even with New Orleans,
I would say like that. One of the major differences is and again, it's not a negative thing, but the hospitality is different the further south you go compared to the further north you go, right? For instance, when we were looking to move, I wanted to go to Houston area because I felt like it was similar to New Orleans in the culture and hospitality aspect. Here in the Metroplex, I believe it's more of a business aspect of things.
That's very true. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But the cultures are definitely different. And I'm not just talking about food and things of that nature. I'm talking about just the way of life, right? Mm-hmm. And some of the outlooks on life. So I would say that the cultures are very different. I would also say, it is a part of the Dallas Metroplex, like we talked about business-wise. You'll have a different kind of economic structure, infrastructure, right? As you mentioned, oil and gas down there. Marine life is very big. Hospitality, tourism, right? Drives. Those are the three main factors of economics there. Well, there are a fortitude of economics here, right? So with that being said, there are different discrepancies between the two, especially from an economic standpoint. But at the end of the day, I would say the similarities are it's all about the people.
I was going to ask you, like, obviously you've figured out that people have the same struggles, regardless of where they live. Yep. And that's kind of where you enter in with what you're doing with your business now. Yeah. So are you still educating right now, or have you basically gotten out of education to do this full time?
Well, yes and yes.
I should say in the formal ISDs. Yeah.
So yes and yes. F42 empowerment is a full-time thing for me. It really has been a blessing. And what people always ask me, well, how long have you been doing this? I said, well, I've been developing people as a human performance coach for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And like, oh yeah, like, yes, I've been an educator. And if you could teach Algebra 1 on a high level to 14 and 15-year-olds, then you definitely going to see some development from August to May, right?
Did you go to school to be a coach, or did you go to school to be a math teacher?
Neither one.
Really?
Yeah, so I went to Langston University, and in 98 is when I started, right? Rural Oklahoma, red dirt, historically black university, right? 12 hours away from home. I mean, I had an academic and athletic scholarship. So my goal was to make sure that my mom and dad didn't have to pay for me to go to school. So once that opportunity came up, I was like, yeah, let's do it. Well, I didn't know that everybody didn't eat red beans and rice on Mondays. I thought everybody had, fish fries and po' boys and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I learned real quick that it was a culture shock, right? But nevertheless, I went to school for business management, organizational management, and finance. How did I get into coaching and teaching? Well, I was chasing the dream to be a professional football player. In fact, I played 2 years of arena football down in Homer, 1 year with the Homer Bayou Bucks, played all over the country. And then I also played in Oklahoma City with the Arena 2 football league with Oklahoma City Yard Dogs. In fact, the stadium or the arena that the Oklahoma Thunder play in, the Ford Center was what it was called then. We kind of opened that. So as I was playing, those are spring leagues, indoor football, arena football. And in the summers, I was still maintaining and growing, right? Well, my cousin was coaching at Old Perry Walker High School in Algiers, on the west bank of New Orleans. And he said, hey, man, I'm an offensive coordinator, wide receiver coach. There's some kids. Why don't you come over and you can still work out and you coach them? I was hooked. And from there, I just learned that, all right, hey, you have to become a certified teacher, because I didn't go to school for education.
Right.
But I was hooked on the gratitude that I felt when I'm providing kids with tools, and then he coming back to me like, Coach, can you show me how to do this? Coach, I did this and it worked. So at that point, I was like, man, I got to do this real life. So from there, I went on into, find out what I need to do to become certified, taught in New Orleans. My journey has gone all the way to here in the Metroplex for the second time, because I came to the Dallas-Fort Worth area after Katrina also.
You did? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a lot of people that came here from Katrina.
Yep.
That was a huge shift for people. So you had to get certified in 2 different states.
Yes.
That's interesting. There's a lot of teachers that are alternatively certified. And especially having gone for different things, I think it's interesting when you go and you find the connection with the students, because you're right. It does. It's a huge deal when you start to connect one thing to the other thing, and then they get it, especially in math. Because math is one of those things that everybody just assumes they're bad at until you figure out the trick. And then you're like, oh, now I understand.
And that's where I really leaned on my experiences outside of education to really teach and develop those kids. Because, again, we teach in Algebra 1, and especially nowadays, kids like, what we using Algebra for?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
And if you're a serious teacher that's really about developing kids, then you're going to find ways to make those lessons relevant.
That's right.
However, sometimes some of us as educators, we just don't do that. We just tell them you just need it. Well, the kid's not conforming anymore.
Right.
They won't know why.
That's a really good question. Like, I just interviewed the GPSD superintendent, the new one, and he actually said you have to find the things that get the kids to school, and then they will learn the English, math, and all the other stuff. It's not the other way around.
Yeah.
People want them to just do math because we had to do math. No, they want to understand. And if you give them a why, they'll do it. But they have to understand why it is relevant. And to be fair, there is a lot of things we teach kids in school that are not relevant at all to what they're ever going to do. Yeah. So I think it's a good question.
It is.
So how would you how would you make it relevant for them? What are some things that you would say?
So I'll just give you an example. So one way that I used to make things relevant and is not as relevant now was the cell phone. Right? So you knew before they started giving away the free phones and the unlimited plans, right? Probably about 10 years ago, it was like, hey, you're going to pay $39.99 to connect the phone. And then for ever so many minutes, you're going to be charged 15 cents a minute. Well, that's an algebra equation. It's a linear equation.
That's such a good point. Yes.
I know that I'm going to have to pay. So, hey, what's my fixed cost? Where you going to start at on the graph? Are you going to start at 0? No, I had to buy the phone for $39.99 to turn it on. All right, so we're going to go on the y-axis up to $39.99. For every minute you use in a month, you have to pay X amount of cent for it. That's our rate of change. Now, that's not in the theory of the books.
No, it's not.
But I knew that I had to catch these kids' attention because at that time, yes, the phone was becoming it wasn't as integral in everyday life, but it was becoming that.
Yes.
And I knew I could get their attention, right? And they wasn't the ones paying the bills, but I'd be like, hey, here's what your parents are paying for, right? So those are the types of things that, again, I really was, like, I was a for real teacher. You could ask some of my colleagues on the staffs that I've been on, and, they'll tell you like, nah, Coach Frank's a real teacher. Like, I took things very serious because I understood, and it kind of goes back, I come from multiple generations of educators. My mom, still an educator, community activist. Both of my grandmothers were educators. So naturally, I learned how to care about people. and also as I develop and with F42 empowerment, helping other teachers, letting them know and school leaders, like, listen, the way that you have to think about this, you do have the power, and that's something I like to teach my players. Like, hey, the teachers got the power, but if you have the power, you need to better use your influence. You need to better use your impact to influence your students.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care if your name is teacher. But the real ones understand that, hey, I'm going to use my impact to really influence you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how we're going to do it. Now, there going to be some challenges along the way. Yeah, that's why it's called life.
Yeah, I know, right?
But if you're optimistic about developing kids and not controlling kids, I think you're going to have an outstanding.
That's a very good difference, because it is very true. Did you start to notice, like, I know you focus a lot in the F42, you focus a lot on men.
Mm-hmm.
And did you start to notice something, like what made you focus on that particular, like on men? I know you help both, but were you noticing things with the boys in school? Like, what were some of the things that you were seeing?
Yeah, I would say this. First of all, just being raised by a village of men, right? I had great examples around me in New Orleans, growing up in New Orleans. Two in particular. Obviously, my dad, even though my mom and my dad divorced when I was a teenager, like, my dad loved us. Like, my dad was one of the strongest and hardest, toughest dudes I ever known, right? And he just showed me different things. There were some things I decided not to do as a man that I saw from him, but the love, the way to kind of handle finances, him showing me that he could go to work overnight on a graveyard shift for most of my life at the post office, come home, make sure his kids get to school, take a nap, go do his hobby, which was he was a cowboy, so he took care of horses, and then he'd come home and warm dinner and go to sleep and get ready to go to work overnight. So where did I get my work ethic from? I saw my dad doing. Where did I get my responsibility from for a family? I saw my dad doing. So when I have a chance to talk to a young man or a middle-aged man that's struggling with family life, I can relate to him in the sense of, look, man, I had the example from not only my dad, but then I was very close to both of my grandfathers. Mm-hmm. See, one thing about living in New Orleans that a lot of people don't know, the city's really not that big. So, it's nothing for me to see my parents, uncles, my grandparents, my cousins, other family members. Like, we don't have to plan that.
You just, like I saw my dad today.
Yeah. Like, we didn't have to plan those things.
Right.
So, again, those men that influenced me and impacted my growth, I was with them on a daily basis. So now, I can relate to teenage boys, obviously, because I've been coaching them. But then the young men who may be coming out of college or at a turning point in their professional lives, right? I can have conversations with them and also give them some guidance on that, because I've done it. I mean, I've been at 13 different campuses in school, and then I didn't go to school for education. See, what some people don't also know is I was a credit manager at Wells Fargo Financial. So I understand about smiling and dialing. I understand when people telling you stop calling me because I don't want to buy that. Your interest rates too. So I understand when you get told no so many times, and your confidence may not feel to where it should be, right? But I can help those people because I've seen different things where people have success. I've also had some failures, and just letting them know that, look, it's not the end of life.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to see that sunshine again, that means you got a chance to get better and keep going.
That's right.
So I would say not just the young males, but all males. I would say, just looking at the influences that have been in my life from a male perspective, what I've decided to do as a man myself. And then also I have 2 kids that watch me.
So we could have a whole nother podcast about community influence, because when you are raised in your own hometown, that's a whole different, like I've been raised in my hometown.
Yeah.
So it's very common for me to run into people that I know that my old teachers at the grocery store.
Yep.
It really does change the way that you walk and talk and how you carry yourself.
Yeah.
Because you can be watched by anybody.
That's true.
And some people, to some people that's a negative. To me, it's a positive because it kind of keeps me accountable and responsible. But that I'm glad that you mentioned that. Did you find that there was a lot of boys lacking in that? That influence of having that male role model. Was that something that you saw, especially being a football coach? I don't know if that's something that you saw a lot.
I'll tell you this. Just being in it every day for over 20 years, a lot of our kids are lacking way more than just males.
Mm.
And notice I said kids because, yes, I do specialize in growing males and helping them to get beyond the edge. But I'll tell you this: that there were some young ladies who were my students who they look for. They look to see Coach Frank every day too, not from a sense of he's handsome, this and that. No, it was more of I was a consistent figure in their life. I was very respectful to them, but then I also, I encouraged them. So I, to answer your question, Jenna, I think that when people really, yeah, you can look at the statistics, but to have a conversation with people like myself or educators, you're really gonna find that those kids have a lot of things that they need,
Mm-hmm.
males or females.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we kind of ostracize the young the males, but I would say that the females and the males need a lot. Now, to answer your question specifically, one thing that yes, males do need guidance, and it's unfortunate. I may make a biased opinion statement, but it just seems like sometimes society right now is trying to feminize our males.
I'm having somebody else on Friday that we're going to talk about this very topic
Yeah.
because, I will tell you, my daughter, she's 14, middle school age. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
seventh and eighth grade is a pivotal time for a lot of these kids in their growth. The person that they love the most at their school his name is Coach Watt. I think he's probably 48 years old. He's real kind to them. They all have special handshakes, but he's that presence. He's a strong guy, and it's almost like kids need to back up against that strength because they will test and test and test and test. My dad was a football coach too. I remember, when they would stand even in the cafeteria, there was like 4 coaches that had all become assistant principals. Just their presence in that cafeteria was a wall.
Yeah.
We're not going to act like this. They didn't have to say anything. But I think that as we move forward, a lot of that, they've tried to get rid of that presence. And I think it does lead to some of the problems that we're seeing, especially with behavior in some of our schools.
Yeah.
And I know it's not something everybody wants to talk about, but it's true. So,
well, when just look at animals.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, we have a brain and we can, think and things of that nature, but you go back into the science, animals and humans are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the male animals, they're there for a reason. The universe put them there for a reason, not to just help with reproduction, right? Yes, we know that the female, just like humans, give birth, but we also know that the male presence is needed for a long time, no matter what they say. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that male presence, now in society, and we talk about education wise, and even outside of education, that male presence is so needed. Hey, look, you can go about doing different things. I'm not the kind of person that says you got to be a male on this straight line, but you need to be a male. And some of those things are really being taken away, like you mentioned. And it is a daily fight and a daily struggle. I always like to share with people when I'm speaking. You got that person on the right side of your shoulder that's telling you can do it. I mean, we all have heard that voice, but then sometimes, unfortunately, within society, we listen to that louder voice that we think is louder on our left side that's telling us, "Nah, stop, retreat. You're scared." But you have to find ways to listen to that voice on your right shoulder. And what I teach is, it's called celebrating the small wins. Whenever you have an opportunity to make progress and you make some success to where you're going, you have to be able to notate that and document that, because it's so hard to continue to develop and create those small wins. But if you document it, and the way I teach it is, man, take your phone, take a picture of yourself, a selfie, write on that, type on it, save that. What does that picture represent? What did you do that day to create that small win? Because when things are challenging, when you're faced up against an edge that you can't go beyond right away, you can put your phone on. I'm like, well, okay, I remember I did this on this day. This can help me. So I at F42 empowerment, I just use all those transferable skills, from dealing with those kids, males and females, to be able to help them to go beyond the edge and be successful. But to answer your question, yes, you do see a lot of the males need guidance, especially if sometimes they're being raised in homes where their mom is doing the best that she can do, or their grandparents are doing the best that they can do, right? I had to learn this as an educator a long time ago. Parents are doing the best that they can do. Some of us know how to do it a little better than others, but most times they just don't send their kid out the house and say, hey, go act up in school.
No, they do not do that.
Most times they don't do that.
Yeah.
It's just that, all right, some of us have to understand that, hey, some of us were able to go down a path that was a little more smoother than others. But that's why they call us coach.
Yes.
Because we have the influence to make a difference. So, yes, I saw that. And now, specializing with those males, because we have to continue to create that strong presence for males, and everybody in society needs it.
Yeah. It's as a single mom, like I will say, and my daughter's dad is very involved in her life. And I made sure of that. But like having the Coach Watts and the people like yourself, be that person in the school and be that person that they see that's consistent, because she knows that no matter what happens, it's going to be the same. And the rules are going to always be the same. And the kids at that age, they're going to brush up against those rules, because that's what you do when you're a adolescent. You test the boundaries, and if the boundaries are always changing, then that's what gives a lot of the uneasy feelings. But if there's always that consistency, then you can grow. And to your point about kind of when things start to get hard, I saw something, it was a meme yesterday, and it said, consistency doesn't feel like anything is changing until one day you wake up and everything is different. And it's like, even when it comes to starting a business, those little things that you have to do every single day, doesn't feel like anything's happening until one day you wake up and you've got clients and you're like, when did that happen? But you've been working on it for 2 years. So, I think sometimes even overcoming adversity is also a part of that, is overcoming the hard things, but it's also overcoming the day-to-day boring that you have to do to get to that where you want to be. So how do you help people get to that point in your program?
And that everything you're speaking about, I'm living, especially in the business world, right? So I use those experiences to help people. For instance, I coach people on building consistent habits, right? How do you do that? Well, I give them an example. No matter what, every day when I wake up, right, I have a stretching routine I've been doing for about the last 2 or 3 years, where I just decided that, hey, I know I'm in my 40s. I'm blessed to be able to move with agility and flexibility and mobility. I want to keep that going. So,
because it does start to creak and crink as you get into your 40s. It was very true. People would say that. I'm like, nah, it won't happen to me. And I'm like, yeah, it does.
Yeah. But I just started stretching. And as I look back on it, and I remember when we used to drive from Fort Worth to Grand Prairie every morning, my son used to be like, Dad, what you doing over there on the floor, man? We got to go. But now I can get in different positions now with my body because I was consistent. Anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, I would stretch and move, right? So I let them know that, hey, starting is the hard part. But you got to start, and I'm here to help you. Whatever you trying to start with, let's talk about it. Let's also find out where we want to be. Let's also identify what can hinder us, right? And then once we start, again, we go back to those small wins, and we create those small wins, and we assess and evaluate, and we adapt. And if we have to make any adjustments, we do that. But in the coaching program, we want to make sure we can help them with being able to start and show up. That's the first edge that they face. Once we get going, starting and showing up, now we start to evaluate and assess our progress as we go. We use those small wins. Then when we do an evaluation and we look to see where we are, right, we find out, okay, what have I learned that I can do better? How can I stretch myself a little bit further? Right? And then you really start seeing that progress, like you mentioned. Yeah, there may have been some things that I may have not been able to do 6-7 months ago, but now I can do this. All right, so let's challenge ourselves and see if we can now stretch ourselves to do something different. And you look up over time as you keep going with your consistency, showing up, and you find out that you have the three S's of success: show up, start, and keep going, so that you can do the things that you need to do.
So I'm glad that you mentioned logging your progress. Humans have a very short memory, especially in their own lives. They don't remember where they were a year ago or what they were feeling or what they were thinking. When I went through my divorce, one of the things that I did was I did something called divorce care. Okay. And I used the same manual. Okay. And I went through it like 6 times. I think I went through it 3 times as a participant, 3 times as a leader. And I used the same one, and I used different colors every time I was writing notes down. And I remember I'd go through and I'm like, I remember when this section was a big deal to me, the first time that I went through it. And now I feel like it doesn't bother me anymore. Obviously, I've made progress, but I didn't feel like I had made progress because I didn't remember how I felt before. So I always tell people, when you can monitor your progress by giving yourself some type of milestones or thing that you can go back and check, a lot of times I feel like people don't realize they've made any progress because they don't know how to measure it.
Yeah.
So do you go through that in your own, like when you say that you measure, what do y'all do? Do y'all keep a journal? How do you do that with your clients?
So we have a small wins tracker, right? And then we also have some journal prompts that they can use to notate and document those challenges that they've overcome and goals that they've met, right? And I'll talk to you also. You mentioned divorce, right? So I just went through a divorce. Obviously, I didn't think that was ever going to happen, but I can relate to a young man. I can relate to a young man when those types of things happen. It's even though the therapy and the counseling has become, people are embracing it a whole lot more. There's still a lot of people who are like, no, I'm not going to that. Nothing's wrong with me.
Right.
But they will come to me and you and just have a conversation because we may not necessarily have those titles behind that name.
Which is basically what counseling is.
Right.
It's just talking to somebody and getting it out of your own head.
Exactly.
And yeah.
But if you can share with them the different color codes that you use, or if you can share with them like, hey man, I went from not being confident and thought I was a failure to now I'm very confident. I'm in a different relationship now, someone that values me in a different way. It can happen. You're going to have to go through the fire.
Right. And for me, it was like showing them like, this thing that you think is so important right now, this little hour that you're arguing over about who gets to spend what time with where, 6 years later, that's not even like a thing. Like we don't even talk about that. So there will be a time when what is important right now doesn't seem like it's that important. And things do change. I think sometimes people have a very short memory, and they also have especially when they're in the middle of a problem that they can't work out, they can't see the future, that it's not always going to be like this. There will come a time, hopefully you can get through a time when it's not like this anymore. So do you find people want to start your program when they're are they in the middle of some kind of life crisis, or like where do people normally come to you at?
I wouldn't necessarily say in a life crisis, but more of like a young man I'm going to start with soon. He's in college. He just wants to be able to work on a few things. Some personal development. He doesn't have any major daily challenges right now, but he just knows he wants to get better. And he found out about the F42 empowerment experience. And those are things that we do also. It's not always when somebody's, right at the edge of a big challenge, right, that they need help, but life can be going good for them, but they want to enhance themselves, right? They want to elevate themselves to a higher level. So to kind of piggyback on what you talked about with the short memory, right, and people not being able to see, there's a big difference between sight and vision.
Continue. What do you mean by that?
So sight is what we can see right in front of us, just as you mentioned, right? But a lot of us need help with cultivating vision, the things that we can't see, right, in the future. For instance, I remember when I was coaching at Fort Worth Southwest High School, My second year, we really had a good team, right? Caleb Allison, Donovan Thomas. We had some kids on that team that, they really bought into what we were doing, the SEC mantra, okay? And we were playing a neighborhood rival. Now, we already had clinched playoff positioning. We actually had clinched home field advantage in the first round. And the boys were like, Coach, man, we need to do this. We need to do that. And it was negative things. I said, guys, y'all want to go on, you're interested in going on social media, or we're interested in doing this and that. I said, but God, that's what's right in front of us. I said, I want y'all to have some vision. When we beat them, they're going to come see us play in 2 weeks. So then the whole vibe changed. Like, damn, Coach, you're right. They're going to be at home. They're going to have to pay to come see us play. And we went on and demolished them because they understood that, hey, man, I'm not just talking about the game. We're going to beat these people. But there's no need for us to focus on this right here. That's in front of you. That's the sight part of it. Mm-hmm. But in 2 weeks, guys, they're going to be coming back to see you play, bro, and they're going to wish that they was on the field.
Yes. So much of the things that we do are reactionary, and it's just about the immediate gratification of what we're going to do right now, instead of being able to see the future. And that is why I feel like coaching became such a thing, because when you coach a team, you have to have a vision for a team. Well, if you're going to be good at it, you have to have a vision for a team. Otherwise, you're not going to be very good at it. Yeah. But you have to have an end goal. And do you find that a lot of people just don't have an end goal for their life, like where they want to, even in the next year?
Yeah.
Do you see that a lot?
I wouldn't necessarily say I see it a lot. I don't know, Jenna, if people really have the tools and the mindset to see what's not in front of them. It's a challenge living life.
Yeah, it is.
Like life, as my lady say, life be life. And sometimes, and I was there before, you get caught up doing so many things that you're not able to just step back and reflect.
Yeah.
Reflection is one of the cornerstones in the F42 empowerment experience for myself. Because I have to be able to step back and figure out that, hey, man, you're doing what you're supposed to do, right? You're on the daily grind, as some people call it. I don't look at it as a grind, right? But you got to be able to step back and appreciate where you are, but then also understand that, like you said, things are going to change. It's going to get better, right? But some people are so busy, they just don't know how to step back, unless there's a life circumstances that cause them to step back, right? Unless someone walks into their life and shows them, like, hey, here's what you're doing. Let's kind of calm the energy a little bit and see what's around you, right? I've had that to happen to me personally, but I'm very grateful that I have people that come into my life, or people I go into their life every day. Another thing that we do from a coaching aspect that I'm doing personally is every day, and I've consistently made this a habit. I did it this morning sitting outside. I write 10 things minimum that I'm grateful for. It could be people, it could be places, it could be just life. 10 things minimum. And then on the back of that page, I write F42 empowerment will allow me to. And I have up to 6 things now. I started off with 3. But that's just a sense of reflection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And I mainly do it in the mornings. Now, a couple of times I've had to do it in the evening because, again, I got busy, right? But that's another tool that we offer to our clients, and not just the males, but anybody that, participates in the F42 empowerment experiences. Hey, just learn how to create a small amount of space where you can just write down some things. I use what I'm grateful for. And then on the backside of that, what I'm mainly focused on is this business. And I write down what I wanted to be able to do for myself, for the people that I'm involved with, for clients, for my family. There's nothing wrong with doing that, because when you start writing that down, now you start meshing that sight and that vision together.
That's right.
Because you're seeing it every day, but then the things that are haven't happened just yet that you're writing about, you're putting them all together.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where sight and vision coincide.
Yeah. I have something on my wall that says, I still remember the things that I prayed for. I still remember, I recognize the things that I have that I prayed for, something to that effect, where it's basically like acknowledging the things that you asked for, that you've received.
Yep.
Because that's another thing we forget about, is things that are fulfilled by the things that we do. So it's like remembering, not just the next prayer, but also what you've prayed for that you've received.
Yep.
And be grateful for that. But even running a business, I told my daughter the other day, I said, because I have three. I'm a real estate agent, I have an estate sale company, and then I do this. And it can be very easy to get lost in the midst of running a business.
Yeah.
And you're constantly feeling like, what can I do to, especially in the beginning, if you're thinking only about what you can do to make more money, that's not a vision. That's not why you're doing something. What you're talking about is, how can I use this business to help other people and to help myself? But I can get very sucked into working literally all the time.
Yeah.
So I told my daughter, she's going to be a freshman. It's not like her senior, when she graduates, it's the end of our time together, but it does feel like there's an end to that. You have a child graduating, and it's like, I feel very finite in my time with her. So I'm like, I need to make sure that I stop and be present with her as much as possible. So that particular day, went to Six Flags, and she rode her first big roller coaster.
All right.
And so, but to your point, it's like stopping and taking a moment and reflecting is a really important thing to do. And we don't do that all the time.
Well, I learned that my mom kind of taught me that, and for your audience members of Faces of Grand Prairie, when you guys follow us, we have a series that we're starting, kind of piggybacking off of Mother's Day, but it's going to be what I call Why Wait Wednesday series about moms. So even though we kind of specialize with males, that's part of our target audience, but I also want your listeners to know, and viewers, that we're going to have something on the F42 Empowerment Experience about Why Wait Wednesday, as far as for moms, right? So she taught me about reflection. But then as a head football coach, every day after practice, I used to sit with my guys in the office and briefly just find out, hey, man, what went well today, what didn't, or here's what's coming up for tomorrow. Here's some things that we want to be able to adjust on. Now, was I meeting just to meet? No. But as the leader, I knew that immediately after practice, there were going to be some things that were going to be shared. There were going to be some things when those guys watched the practice film, and then there were going to be some other things like right before practice that were going to be communicated. So now I had 3 different lenses to be able to see things. But if I just wait till the next day, right, there are going to be some things that was missed right after practice that they wanted to communicate. So I saw that worked from an organizational leadership standpoint, and also sharing with leaders of companies and organizations. Like, you have to better assess and reflect.
Yes.
You have to, because as you know, and I know from leading not only students, but adults, people at other campuses, it's a lot. But I think the effective leaders find ways to carve out that time to reflect on what's working, to ask for input on things that could be different.
That's a key right there. Ask for input.
Right.
People that want to control. What did you say at the beginning? Do you want to impact or do you want to control?
Yeah, do you want to control people or develop?
Develop it. So if the people that want to actually develop will ask for input and figure out what went wrong and what went right. Yeah. People that want to control don't care. They just want to impose, and that's it.
Well, look at it like the 3 L's, right? I think that people that, are in a position to carry an organization and be a face of an organization, right? They learn how to listen. They learn how to, they listen, they learn, and then they lead. In that order. And I think that, I know that from, like I said, I learned so much the first time I was a head football coach to the second time. It wasn't totally different, but I learned a lot. I'm very observant, right? And from a leadership standpoint, there are just so many things that people can get better at leading organizations when you just listen, learn, and then lead, right? Because you get to find out about the people that you're leading. You find out about the 3 categories, and I like to help people with the PCL method, being able to understand, like, hey, who's just a participator in the organization? Who's a contributor in the organization? Who's a lifer? Because those 3 people have different developmental stages.
That's very true.
Those 3 people are going to bring so many totally different things to the organization. And one way that you can help yourself as a leader and not be so frustrated is when you can identify what category those people fall in. But then when you really become a superhero, you really find out how to increase their capacity depending on the category they're in, and increase their capability, because those are 2 different things. But then you also figure out that, hey, if all they can give me is 20%, I'm cool with that, because now I know.
Now, yeah, exactly.
Now I know. It's no reason for me to get frustrated at me or them if that's all they could give me. You know what? That's all right. I'm going to work with you. And your 20% that you're going to be able to contribute, that's going to be the best 20% that you can.
Right.
And I learned that by, again, coaching kids. There's no one. Once I figured out that I'm not going to pick the kid that's just participating, who really enjoys, like, I'm just here with my friends.
Right.
It's all right that we win or lose. I just want to sit at the table for lunch with the cool kids. I'm not going to put that kid in the game in the 4th quarter when the outcome is determined on. I'm not going to do that.
Because he is accomplishing the goal that he wants already. He's there with his friends. The goal is not to win.
He just wants to participate.
He just wants to. That's a really good. That's very, very good. What did you say? The participator, the contributor,
and the lifer.
So the lifers are the ones that are like, I want to make this my career and be an NFL player and stuff like that. I'm here and I'm going to win.
Yeah, I'm here going to win. But it also works in Fortune 500 companies. It works in churches. It's some people that. So all of us have different capacities and capabilities. And once I figured that out, I was like, this is easy.
That is very true.
It takes a whole lot off of you as a leader. You don't get as frustrated with certain things.
Because so much time you're spending on trying to get people that are just there to participate to be the people that are there doing all the stuff, and that's not the way to go about it.
But you got that life that's right around the corner. They cap is open. They just waiting for you to pour into them.
Right.
And they're going to pour out as much as they can. They want to refill. But you sometimes we stuck on our ego or our power trip, and we think that, there's a certain standards. But everybody's just not going to be able to do everything the same way. I'm serious. I had to learn that myself.
Yeah.
Everybody not built like you.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah. So what you said, we're kind of getting to the end of our time. You had something for the listeners as a gift. So explain to them what that is.
So listeners will get 2 things, right? One thing that we started off with F42 empowerment is just helping people with their hopes, dreams, and goals. Okay. And being able to, as we talked about, assess as you make your progress. Okay. There'll be a document that people can use to be able to write down what their hopes, dreams, and goals are. I believe that those are 3 different things, right? Hopes are some of the things that we kind of wish for, right? Our dreams is fascinated with our imagination, right? And then our goals is just some tangible things that we can kind of work forward to, all right? So they'll be able to get that document and use it as they choose to. I would suggest if you have some young people in your home, allow them to be able to see that. Because I also talk to students about, hey, there are 3 different categories of ages, right? Think about this. When you're 0 to 10 years old, you're not really thinking about goals. You got a lot of hopes and dreams, right? And then when you kind of go into high school, junior high school, into early college, that's where your dreams really come into play, right? And then as you go into young adulthood, now you can see all 3 of them. Right?
True.
So they'll have that document to be able to use. And then also they'll get a document about the F42 Empowerment Experience, an acronym called FRANK. And just for leadership, being able to understand that, hey, you can be focused. You can also be reliable. You can be able to adapt. You can be a noble leader. And then you can be kind and all those types of things also. And they can also connect with me on that the second document. It'll be a ticket to the F42 Empowerment Experience. They scan the QR code and we can connect.
Where can people find you?
I would say the best place is the website. It's www.daronfranklin.com, and that's Daron Franklin.com. And from there, you'll be able to find out about me, different social media handles. You can connect with us, connect with me at the top. And if you're interested in doing some one-on-one coaching, or if you're interested in finding out some more about how the people in your organization can go beyond the edge and achieve different desired results, we also can do that and work together.
Well, it was a pleasure having you on today.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you reached out to me.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's about, just being able to reach out to people. I would tell anyone, as you go from, those hopes, dreams, and goals, man, don't be afraid.
No, and I will say, one of the things that the Grand Prairie Chamber of Commerce President Brian Bondi and I were talking about this, he goes, young people do not know how to network. Networking is a skill you learn how to do. It's not just something that you just have. But what you did was you met me and then you reached out and you took the next step.
Yeah.
You know how many people don't take the next step? They just are in a place and then you're like, I reached out. I made sure that it happened.
Yeah.
That's a skill.
Well, I'll tell you this and I'll leave you with this story, right? Jenna, if you ever come to New Orleans and you meet some of the people that know me, they're going to be like, he's doing what? No.
Really?
I was the quietest kid, the coolest kid. In high school, I was a team captain, played football and basketball. Some people didn't even know I played football. When I got to college, I was a team captain, all conference 2 years. I was sitting in classes, people didn't even know I played football. Right? So now I'm talking, I'm presenting, I'm doing different things. And people are like, you're doing what? But at the same time, what people did know about me from an athletic standpoint was like, I didn't need nobody to tell me to go get better. Like, that I just, again, I saw my dad, and I had an influential big brother / cousin, David Yak Johnson, that, helped me and guided me through with certain things from an athletic standpoint, along with one of my uncles, Kenneth Franklin. But it was like, nobody had to tell me to go get better. So yeah, when I reached out to you, I've gotten opportunities over the last year because I was patient, persistent, and positive.
There you go.
And that's what I try to share with young people. Hey, you never know who you're sitting next to.
That is very true. You don't know who you're sitting next to.
I say, you got to have some vision. 5-10 years from now, y'all might need each other. I'm not saying you got to be best friends, but in my classroom, I was very intentional about cooperative learning. Oh, we're going to learn how to talk. We're going to be face partners. Y'all have to talk about this. Now, well, coach, I don't want to do that. This is how we're doing in this class. That was kind of one of the few things that were non-negotiable. Because I didn't know, I know I missed out on some opportunities early in life, but I stayed to myself.
Yes. There's so many people right now. We could come on and do a whole nother podcast just about networking and business, where I go to some of these networking groups, especially lately. And they're like, I have to get out of my comfort zone, because your comfort zone doesn't produce any results. And they're realizing that staying inside and not reaching out, learning how to be something new, learn something new, is not giving them what they want. So they have to find a different way to do it. So like several times in this recent networking mix and mingle that I did, people would stand up and go, this is my first time to be here. I've never done anything like this before, but I know that I have to get out of my comfort zone. Everybody's so scared to get out of their comfort zone. Man. But if you want things to happen, that's what you have to do.
You better, because when I found out if you don't, you're going to have, it's the difference between reasons and results. I'm interested in results.
Right. Exactly. What is going to get you what you're looking for? But you have to know what you're looking for. If the result is that you need sales, why do you not? People think that they're just going to start doing a business and then people are just going to knock their door down. I remember when I got my real estate license, I grew up in this town. Everybody knows my last name. My last name's very unique. People know my parents grew up in this town too. I was like, so I'm just going to hand out my business cards. I'm going to put a sign in somebody's yard, and then everybody's going to come to me and tell me that they want to list their house with me, right? That's how it's going to work. That first year, I think I sold one house. And I was so discouraged, and I was like, why is this not working? And I realized it's because I didn't know how to measure how my everyday activities were getting me where I wanted to be, which is more listings. I needed more listings. So then I went to a top producer panel, and they started talking about all the different ways that they got business. And one guy said, I love to have parties. I always have parties at my house. He bought and sold only in his own neighborhood. And he's like, I had 4 parties a year. I love to host parties. And I was like, I love to host parties. I could do that.
Yep.
But then I started hosting parties in my own neighborhood. And when I started doing that is when things clicked for me. But I think a lot of people feel like, I'm just going to tell people, they will all see the value in my amazing business. They will all just immediately want to come work with me. And it doesn't work that way. No matter how good of a business model you have, if you're not going out there and actually trying to find people that are your customers, it's never going to work. But people are starting to realize that now, that face-to-face, and not just being on social media and putting out a message onto social media. You have to get in front of people.
You have to. And it's like, what you're describing is what I call, you learned a lot of life currency. You were earning while you were learning, right? So all that means is there were multiple opportunities, doors of opportunities that you've come up to. For some of those doors, when you sold your first home, that means you had the key to it. You unlocked the opportunity, right? Some of those doors, you went to knock on the door, and immediately people opened the door. It was like, nah. Some doors you knocked on, nobody answered. But when you came back and you knocked again, they may have said no, but they might have said, you know what? I know somebody that needs your service.
Right.
So that's what we have to better teach our young people. It's like, hey, just because somebody might not answer, just because they might say no, that just means not yet.
Yes, especially in a world of applying for things online, putting out your resume to 1,000 different companies and not hearing anything back.
Yep.
You still, no matter how much we get online, you still have to have that personal one-on-one opportunity face-to-face. And making the kids sit across from each other and doing that, we have to teach them more about that, because you could be online, but it doesn't change the fact that you still have to deal with people in person every day.
Yeah, those are the soft skills that we also, again, I'm finding out in business, right? You can't try to serve everybody.
Right. No, you cannot.
Right. And what I'm learning is, and I have a lot of transferable skills. They call them soft skills now, but I didn't know it was called soft skills. I just thought it was everyday life skills.
Right.
You got to be able to talk to people. But again, I know from coming out of those classrooms and understanding what people in the workforce, leaders in the workforce, are frustrated about it. They're like, the younger generation, the communication is like, they don't work this. I said, no, it's not that they don't have a work ethic. It's just that America's already built. Y'all coming from an industrialized mentality.
It's little things even too. It's like the other day we were at a historical organization trivia thing, and I told Avery, she was sitting across, she's 14, and she was sitting across from a guy, he had been in his 80s, and they were doing a little like trivia thing. And I looked at her and said, shake his hand. And she put out her hand like this. And he goes, oh, are you a southpaw? And she goes, and I said, do you know what that means? And she said, no. I said, well, it's because when you shake someone's hand, you shake it with your right. Yeah. And so he assumed that you were left-handed. That just shows me that I need to teach you how to shake hands. Even something as small as how to shake hands. So we literally had a lesson in the car. We were sitting at a red light. I said, shake my hand. And I said, don't let your wrist go like this.
There you go.
Have a stiff wrist.
Yep.
You extend your hand, and then you shake it, and you grab as tight as the other person grabs. Little things like that, they don't know. So it's like when you have a generation above you that knows how to shake hands, and when you just do it like this, that's not saying anything about who you are. I said a strong handshake speaks volumes if you can learn how to do it. Those are the things we need to connect for young people. Little things.
Jenna, you have to we got to come back again, because I got a lot of other things we can talk about that I'm quite sure you're going to be seeing over the next few years with your young teenager, Avery. And, if you would have us again, I would like to come talk about some of those things.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it. Well, thank you, Daron. I appreciate your time today.
Hey, I enjoyed it. Forward to coming back again.
And I'll put that link for the free gift in the description of the episode and on all the places where it gets sent out, so everybody knows where it is.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.